The missile doesn't miss. It detonates just off the right wing of the F-15E, close enough to turn night into white fire. The cockpit slams sideways. The aircraft shudders like it's been hit by a freight train at 27,000 feet. Warning lights erupt across the panel. Right engine fire. Hydraulic pressure low. Fuel imbalance. The jet rolls hard right. The pilot fights the stick, boots pressing into the rudder pedals, trying to keep 30 tons of damaged metal from flipping into a spiral. Missile impact. The WSO says, voice tight but controlled. They are 300 miles inside a rocky airspace. No friendly runway nearby. No quick rescue. No second chance. The right engine is losing thrust. Temperatures are spiking. Vibration is increasing. Most pilots would punch out. But the aircraft is still flying. Barely. And the decision that comes next will decide whether they walk away or vanish into the desert sky. The first rule after a missile hit is simple. Fly the jet. Not the checklists. Not the fear. The jet. The pilot stabilizes at 25,000 feet, trimming aggressively against the yaw, pulling them toward the dead side. The right engine instruments are a mess. EGT spiking, RPM unstable, oil pressure dropping in uneven pulses. The fire light flickers, then goes solid. Confirm right engine fire, the pilot says. Confirmed. Severe vibration. Possible turbine damage. The WSO replies, already flipping through the emergency page. They don't rush. They can't afford to. The F-15E Strike Eagle is built for punishment. Twin engines, redundant hydraulics, reinforced structure, but a proximity blast that close can do more than punch holes. It can shred wiring, sever control lines, rupture fuel cells hidden inside the wings. The jet feels heavy on the right. Sluggish, not catastrophic, but wrong. The pilot pulls the right throttle back to idle. No improvement. Fire handle? The WSO asks. The pilot hesitates for half a second. If he pulls it, it will shut down the engine, cut fuel, and discharge the fire bottle. But if the engine is still producing asymmetric thrust, killing it will change the handling instantly. Stand by. He tests the controls first. Gentle bank left. The aircraft responds. Bank right. Slower, but responsive. Elevator authority intact. No full hydraulic failure yet. The master caution tone pulses again. Right eng fire. Persistent. That settles it. Pulling. The fire handle snaps back with a mechanical click. Fuel flow drops. The fire light stays on for 2 long seconds. Then it extinguishes. But the engine is done. They are now a single-engine fighter, deep in contested airspace, carrying external tanks and precision-guided munitions they haven't released yet. Engine secured, the WSO confirms. Hydraulics B system degraded but holding. That's good news. The Strike Eagle uses dual hydraulic systems to power flight controls. Lose both, and you're a glider with bad odds. Lose one, and the jet becomes heavier, slower to respond, but survivable. The pilot takes a breath. The aircraft is flying. Not well, not clean, but flying. Then the radar warning receiver screams again. They're still inside the threat envelope. The missile that hit them wasn't the only one launched. Search radar reacquiring, the WSO says. Multiple emitters. The blast plume and debris trail may have given away more than their position. A damaged jet is easier to track, hotter, less stable, maybe bleeding fuel. They have to leave. Now. Jettison external tanks, the pilot commands. The 2 underwing tanks drop away, tumbling into darkness. The aircraft instantly feels lighter, cleaner in the air. Fuel state drops on the display, still enough to make it home. If they don't have to reroute too far. The pilot eases the left throttle forward. The remaining engine responds with a steady surge. Thrust builds. The jet accelerates, but slowly. Single-engine performance at altitude is unforgiving. They descend slightly to gain efficiency. Below them, Iraq stretches into black desert and scattered city lights. Distance to border? The pilot asks. 280 nautical miles. That's nearly half an hour of flying time under perfect conditions. These are not perfect conditions. The right wing is damaged. They don't know how badly. Fuel imbalance continues creeping up. Right side losing pressure. Could be a leak. Could be sensor damage. Either way, asymmetry makes the jet harder to control. The WSO runs through structural checks. No rapid decompression. No canopy cracks. No immediate wing separation risk. But something else is wrong. Flight control response lagging slightly, the WSO notes. Possible actuator damage. The pilot feels it too. The stick input isn't as crisp. The aircraft answers, but with a half-second delay that shouldn't exist. That delay, in a single-engine fighter, can become fatal during high-stress maneuvering. They are not dogfighting. They are not diving. They are not evading violently. They are surviving. The pilot switches mental modes, from attack mindset to recovery mindset. Step 1. Exit threat envelope. Step 2. Conserve the remaining engine. Step 3. Keep the jet balanced long enough to reach friendly airspace. The radio crackles. Strike package, confirm status. The pilot keys the mic. Night 2 hit. Single engine. Egressing west. There's a brief silence on the frequency. Then, copy. Night 2. AWACS tracking. Nearest divert unavailable. Recommend direct return. Direct return. No safety net. The pilot nods even though no one can see him. He adjusts heading slightly, calculating crosswind drift, remaining fuel, and engine stress. The left engine is now doing the work of two. Overthrottle it, and they lose everything. The aircraft shudders once more as turbulent air hits the damaged wing. The pilot grips the stick tighter. He's flown this jet for years. He knows its personality, the subtle vibration of healthy thrust, the smooth roll rate of intact control surfaces. This is different. This is a wounded animal still trying to run. Behind them, a faint glow lingers where the missile detonated. Ahead of them, 280 miles of hostile sky. They are alive, but survival hasn't been earned yet. Not even close. Single-engine flight in an F-15E isn't impossible. It's just unforgiving. At 23,000 feet, the remaining engine is now responsible for keeping a combat-damaged, partially unbalanced aircraft airborne. The left throttle sits higher than it ever should in cruise. EGT rising. Core RPM near limits. Keep it below military power, the WSO says quietly. If we cook this one, we're done. The pilot nods. He doesn't need reminding. The Strike Eagle is built around power. Two F-100 engines give it dominance. Thrust to weight that allows aggression, recovery, vertical escape. On one engine, that advantage disappears. Now it's a calculation. Fuel flow rate changes with asymmetric burn. The right wing tank indicator flickers again. Possible fuel leak, the WSO mutters. Right internal decreasing faster than predicted. That explains the creeping imbalance. The missile fragments likely punctured part of the right wing fuel cell. It isn't dumping catastrophically, but it's bleeding. Fuel imbalance in a twin-engine fighter isn't just about range. It shifts center of gravity. It changes roll characteristics. It adds workload. The jet starts to pull subtly right again. Not from thrust this time, from weight difference. The pilot trims left rudder. Small corrections. Don't fight it hard. Overcorrecting burns more energy. Outside the canopy, the desert horizon is a faint line. No clouds. No cover. The RWR spikes. Tracking radar north quadrant, the WSO says. They are still inside the outer envelope of hostile SAM coverage. Not the launch zone anymore, but close enough for surveillance. The pilot drops another 1,000 feet. Lower altitude increases fuel burn but reduces radar exposure. Trade-offs. Every decision is a trade. The aircraft vibrates again, not violently, but differently this time. Feel that? The pilot asks. Yeah, possibly structural resonance from damaged paneling. The right side of the fuselage took shrapnel. Even small panel deformation at 500 knots creates aerodynamic instability. They reduce speed slightly. Too fast, and damaged surfaces could worsen. Too slow, and single-engine lift margin shrinks. The WSO runs a deeper system scan. Hydraulic B pressure fluctuating. Electrical bus stable. Flight control channel intact, but slower. They are flying a jet that is technically airborne but mechanically compromised. Time to border. 26 minutes, the WSO says. That number feels long. Too long. The pilot's mind starts running worst-case scenarios. If the left engine flames out, no restart at this altitude with that damage profile. If hydraulics fully fail, controls become heavy, near manual reversion. If structural damage propagates, wing separation. He shuts the thoughts down. Fly the jet. AWACS checks in again. Night 2, you are clear of immediate threat. No additional launches detected. That's the first good news. But threat clearance doesn't mean safety. The pilot slowly increases thrust to regain slight altitude. He wants options. A single-engine jet low over hostile territory has few. Altitude equals glide distance, but more altitude equals more engine stress. The engine gauges tremble near the yellow arc. The pilot reduces throttle slightly again. He won't push it unless he has to. The WSO recalculates fuel state. At current burn, we make home base with minimal reserve. Alternate field within range if needed. Minimal reserve. That means no second approach. No go around. One landing attempt. They cross a faint grid line on the navigation display. Pre-briefed reference point. Crossing sector boundary, the WSO says. Still not friendly, but closer. The pilot's hands are steady, but his shoulders ache. Continuous micro-adjustments fight yaw and roll imbalance. The jet never quite flies straight anymore. It wants to drift. He doesn't let it. The remaining engine emits a low rumble through the frame. Healthy, but overworked. The Strike Eagle wasn't designed to limp. It was designed to dominate. Now it is surviving on discipline. Another small jolt. Right wing vibration increasing. The WSO reports. The pilot glances at structural load indicator. Within limits. Barely. Reduce speed 5 knots. Speed bleeds slightly. The vibration softens. That likely means a torn panel edge fluttering in airflow. Annoying. Dangerous if ignored. They hold steady. Minutes stretch. No new radar spikes. No new alarms. Just the long, grinding reality of flying damaged metal across hostile territory on one functioning engine. Then, fuel imbalance warning intensifies. Right side nearly depleted. Left side heavy. The pilot commands crossfeed. Fuel valves shift. The aircraft steadies slightly. The WSO checks for additional leaks. Nothing catastrophic, but the right wing tank is almost dry, which might actually help. Less imbalance, less drag. They are now roughly 200 miles from friendly airspace. Still a long way. The cockpit is quiet except for engine hum and occasional system chirps. The pilot thinks about ejection again, not because he wants to, but because he calculates survival odds. Eject now. Enemy territory. Capture possible. Rescue uncertain. Continue. Mechanical risk. Engine failure fatal. He stays with the aircraft. The F-15E is still responding. Still lifting. Still pushing west. And as long as it does, he won't abandon it. Because a wounded jet that flies is better than a parachute drifting into the wrong hands. The border is coming, but the hardest part may still be ahead. Landing a damaged, asymmetric, fuel-compromised fighter on one engine. And they're not there yet. Not even close. The navigation display ticks down slowly. 200 miles. 195. 190. It doesn't feel like progress. It feels like a countdown. The F-15E is no longer a strike platform. It's a wounded airframe being kept alive by precision and restraint. The left engine hums with a steady, overworked growl. Not screaming, not surging, just carrying more than it was designed to carry alone. Border in 12 minutes, the WSO says. 12 minutes in a normal sortie is nothing. Right now, it's everything. Hydraulic B pressure flickers again. Not a total failure, but unstable. The pilot tests gentle roll input. The aircraft responds, slower than before. There's a slight lag in the right aileron. Damage on that side may be interfering with actuator efficiency. Control feels heavier, he says. Copy. Still within tolerance. Tolerance. That word means they're safe enough, for now. The RWR remains quiet. Either the enemy lost track after the hit, or they've shifted priority to other targets. The Strike Eagle is limping low and no longer radiating aggressively. A damaged aircraft isn't always worth chasing if it looks like it's leaving. But the pilot doesn't assume mercy. He lowers altitude another 1,000 feet to stay beneath some radar arcs, balancing fuel burn and engine strain. The left throttle remains just below military power. He refuses to push into afterburner. That's a last resort that would shred fuel and overheat the core. Fuel state update. Total remaining. Borderline for primary base. Alternate safer. Primary base is farther but better equipped. Alternate is closer but shorter runway. He thinks about approach speed. Thinks about weight. Thinks about the possibility that hydraulics degrade further during final. We go primary, he says quietly. It's a gamble, but primary gives them space. Space equals margin. Margin equals survival. The borderline approaches on the display. 100 nautical miles. The jet shudders lightly as airflow hits the damaged wing again. It's not catastrophic, but it's a reminder. This aircraft is not intact. Engine temps stable, the WSO reports. Vibration acceptable. Acceptable isn't comforting. The pilot shifts his grip slightly. His right forearm aches from constant rudder compensation. He flexes his fingers briefly, then recenters. 60 miles. The border at night isn't a wall. It's a mental line. But crossing it changes everything. At 30 miles out, a WACS comes back. Night 2. You are approaching friendly airspace. No current threat tracking. That's the first moment he allows himself to exhale slightly. They cross. No alarms. No sudden tone. Just a quiet transition from hostile sky to controlled airspace. But survival isn't secured, because now comes the hardest part. Bringing a damaged jet down. Begin descent planning, the WSO says. The pilot reduces throttle slightly and initiates a controlled descent. Single-engine descent must be smooth, no aggressive pitch changes. The damaged right side doesn't like abrupt airflow shifts. Hydraulics fluctuate again. Pressure holding, but low, the WSO notes. Landing gear extension later will depend on that system. He runs through mental rehearsal. Gear down at proper speed. Flaps limited. Maintain higher approach speed. No go around unless absolutely necessary. If engine fails on short final, eject decision point. He calculates the minimum safe altitude for ejection. He hopes he won't need it. Descent continues. 10,000 feet. 5,000. The runway lights appear faint in the distance. ATC clears them direct. Emergency services are already staged. The pilot avoids thinking about that. Instead, he thinks about symmetry. A damaged right side means more drag when gear deploys. He delays gear extension slightly longer than standard. 3,000 feet. Hydraulics steady enough for gear, the WSO says. Stand by. The aircraft is still stable, but only because he's managing it like glass. 2,000 feet. Gear. The handle moves. A short mechanical rumble. The aircraft shifts weight. Left, then right. 3 green. The WSO confirms. Relief. Gear locked. But the jet now feels heavier again. Drag increased. Speed must stay above stall margin. He lines up long and shallow. No tight turns. No aggressive correction. Just patience. The runway grows larger. Engine parameters steady. Wind slight cross from the right. Not ideal with right side damage. He counters gently. 500 feet. He keeps the nose slightly lower than usual to maintain airflow authority. 300. The jet wobbles once. He corrects immediately. 100 feet. Throttle steady. No flare yet. At 20 feet, he eases back. Main wheels slam harder than normal. But they're down. They're rolling. The jet pulls slightly right. He counters with rudder and brakes carefully, not aggressively. Damaged hydraulics could respond unpredictably. Speed bleeds. 100 knots. 80. 60. The jet slows. Finally, stops. Silence inside the cockpit feels unnatural after the last 30 minutes. The pilot doesn't move for a second. Then he says quietly, "Engine cut off." The remaining engine winds down. Only then does reality settle in. They made it, but the real damage is still hidden in the metal behind them. And the ground crew is about to discover just how close that missile came to ending everything. When the canopy opens, the first thing the pilot smells isn't fuel. It's burned composite and scorched metal. Ground crew rush in, but they slow as they reach the right side of the aircraft. Someone whistles under their breath. The right engine housing isn't just dented. It's shredded. Shrapnel scars run along the fuselage like claw marks. Jagged entry points around the intake lip. The exhaust section is partially deformed. One maintenance chief crouches and shines a flashlight upward into the engine core. He doesn't say anything at first. Then, "You're lucky this thing didn't disintegrate." Fragments from the proximity detonation sliced through the outer casing. Several penetrated the turbine section. One piece embedded itself inches from a fuel line that, if ruptured fully, would have turned the entire aircraft into a fireball. The right wing root shows burn scoring. Not structural failure, but close. One hydraulic line is partially severed, leaking just enough to destabilize pressure but not enough to empty the system instantly. That was the difference. Not perfection. Margin. A few inches of it. The Strike Eagle's design philosophy isn't stealth first. It's survivability through strength. Twin engines separated far enough to prevent total loss from a single hit. Multiple hydraulic systems. Redundant electrical buses. Reinforced wing spars. That design saved them. If this had been a single-engine aircraft, there would have been no long flight home. Maintenance crews count penetration points. 43 confirmed shrapnel entries. Some superficial, some dangerously deep. One fragment lodged in the right horizontal stabilizer actuator. If that had severed completely, pitch control could have degraded mid-flight. The pilot stands under the wing, helmet off, staring at the damage. He doesn't look triumphant. He looks analytical. He replays the impact in his head. The timing. The bank angle, the altitude. If the missile had detonated 2 meters closer, the cockpit might not exist. The WSO joins him. "Engine's gone," he says quietly. "Yeah, the left engine cowling is inspected too. It's intact, but maintenance notes signs of elevated temperature stress from prolonged high-output operation." It carried the aircraft home, but it ran near limits. Single-engine return at that weight and distance was not textbook. It was controlled risk. Inside debrief, analysts reconstruct the missile event. Surface-to-air system likely an older but upgraded variant. Proximity fuse optimized for high-speed intercept. It detonated slightly aft of optimal kill radius. Why? Possibly due to last-second maneuvering. Possibly electronic interference. Possibly luck. Luck is rarely admitted in official documents, but pilots know it exists. The debrief officer asks the pilot the obvious question. "Why didn't you eject?" The room is quiet, because statistically, after a confirmed engine fire and missile hit deep in enemy territory, ejection is acceptable. Expected, even. The pilot answers without drama. The jet was flying. That's it. As long as the jet flies, you fly it. That mindset is drilled into every fighter pilot. Aircraft are built to endure more than people think, but only if the pilot trusts them long enough to try. Data playback shows the exact moment the fire handle was pulled. 2 seconds later, engine fire extinguished. Another 5 seconds of delay, and internal temperature may have breached critical containment. The decision window was narrow. The fuel imbalance logs show the right wing tank lost nearly 12% capacity post-impact. Had that leak accelerated, asymmetric weight could have worsened handling beyond manageable limits. The aircraft returned with less than minimal reserve fuel. 10 minutes more in the air, and alternate field would have been mandatory. Everything about the return was tight. Tight on fuel, tight on hydraulics, tight on structural tolerance, but controlled. The Strike Eagle earns its reputation in moments like this. It's not the fastest air superiority fighter in modern inventory. It's not the stealthiest, but it is durable, and durability wins when things go wrong. Ground crew eventually towed the aircraft into the hangar. Panels removed, engine stripped, damage documented. The pilot signs initial report paperwork. No medals mentioned, no ceremony, just technical assessment and mission closure. Somewhere inside that hangar, the aircraft sits silent under bright white lights. From a distance, it still looks lethal. Up close, it looks like it survived a war in a single night. The WSO glances back at it once more before leaving. Hell of a machine. The pilot nods. Hell of a night. But what lingers isn't pride. It's awareness. If that missile had been slightly more accurate, if the hydraulic line had fully ruptured, if the left engine had overheated 5 minutes earlier, the story would be different. And no one outside that sky would ever know how close it came. That's the part people don't see. Not the explosion, not the landing, but the narrow gap between destruction and survival. That gap was measured in inches of metal and seconds of decision. And tonight, the F-15E held together long enough to carry its crew home. But the real test wasn't over yet. Because flying damaged metal is one thing. Understanding how close you came is another. The adrenaline doesn't fade immediately. It drains slowly, long after the aircraft is powered down, long after the debrief ends, long after the paperwork is signed. The pilot sits alone in a quiet room, helmet resting on the table in front of him. His hands are steady now, but earlier they weren't. Earlier they were gripping the stick so tightly that the muscles in his forearms are still trembling. He replays the moment of impact. The flash, the violent yaw, the engine fire light. There's always a moment in combat aviation where time compresses. Seconds feel stretched. Decisions sharpen. Emotions disappear. That moment came when the fire warning stayed on. He remembers thinking, this is it. Not dramatically. Not like in a movie. Just clinically. Engine on fire. Deep in hostile airspace. Hundreds of miles from friendly territory. The safest move would have been to eject. Ejection is survival protocol. But survival protocol isn't always the mission. He didn't stay in the jet out of stubbornness. He stayed because the aircraft was controllable. That's the line. If the jet is uncontrollable, you leave. If it's flying, you fly it. The F-15E is not designed to quit easily. Its twin-engine layout exists for exactly this reason. Engine spacing reduces the chance that a single missile destroys both power plants. Redundant hydraulic systems mean one damaged line doesn't mean total control loss. Dual electrical buses ensure instruments stay alive even if one side is compromised. But redundancy only matters if the pilot manages it correctly. He could have overthrottled the remaining engine in panic, could have climbed too aggressively, could have forced high G corrections trying to escape too fast. Any of those would have overstressed the airframe. Instead, he flew it conservatively. That discipline is harder than aggression. In combat, aggression feels natural. Restraint feels wrong. But restraint brought them home. The debrief team later calculates the probability envelope. Given missile proximity, engine loss, and hydraulic degradation, the likelihood of safe return was not high. But it was not zero. Zero means eject. Not zero means fly. Somewhere in another building, intelligence officers analyze the missile launch. They reconstruct radar signatures, determine probable launch site, evaluate enemy doctrine. But none of that changes what happened in the cockpit. The WSO, reviewing sensor footage, pauses the frame at the exact instant of detonation. The missile proximity fuse triggered slightly aft of optimal intercept geometry. Why? Possibly due to last-second banking maneuver. Possibly due to slight electronic countermeasure interference. Possibly a minor timing offset in the fuse. Again, margin. The phrase keeps returning. Margin of survival. The F-15E airframe is designed with combat redundancy for this reason. The wing spars are reinforced titanium structures capable of sustaining limited fragmentation. Fuel cells are self-sealing. Hydraulic lines are routed in separated paths. These aren't marketing features. They're survival engineering. When the right engine turbine was torn apart, the containment system prevented catastrophic rotor burst. Had a turbine disc escaped the casing, the fuselage could have been shredded from inside. That didn't happen. Another margin. Maintenance later confirms something chilling. One fragment passed within inches of the main flight control linkage assembly. Had that linkage been severed, manual control authority might have been lost instantly. There would have been no 30-minute return. No landing. Just a spiraling descent. These aren't heroic thoughts. They're technical ones. Combat aviation isn't poetry. It's geometry and physics. And tonight, geometry aligned just enough. The pilot finally stands and walks back to the hangar. The Strike Eagle sits partially disassembled, panels removed, wiring exposed. Under bright lights, it looks less like a weapon and more like a machine that endured trauma. He walks along the right side, running his hand lightly over the scorched metal. You don't name fighter jets. You don't anthropomorphize them, but pilots understand their aircraft in personal ways. He knows how this jet feels in a hard turn, knows its vibration pattern at cruise, knows the subtle differences between engines. Tonight, it brought him home. The WSO joins him quietly. You ever think about punching out? The pilot doesn't hesitate. For about half a second. That's the truth. Half a second is all it takes to weigh a life-altering decision. But half a second also determines whether you trust the machine beneath you. They leave the hangar without ceremony. No cameras, no applause. In official records, the sortie will be documented as combat damage sustained and aircraft recovered. That's it. No headline will capture the tension of single-engine flight over hostile terrain. No article will describe the constant micro-adjustments, the sweat inside gloves, the silent calculations at 20,000 feet. But the lesson remains. Combat survivability is not luck alone. It's design, training, and a refusal to surrender control while control still exists. The missile hit, the engine died, but the aircraft did not quit. And neither did they. What remains is a quiet understanding shared between pilot and machine. Sometimes survival is not spectacular. It is disciplined. And that discipline is what carried a wounded F-15E across hundreds of miles of hostile sky. On one engine, the runway lights came into view just after midnight. No emergency sirens, no dramatic radio chatter, just a calm voice from tower. Strike 1, cleared to land. The F-15E touched down heavier than usual, asymmetrical thrust, damaged systems, wounded but stable. The remaining engine howled as the pilot kept it alive through rollout. When the jet finally slowed, silence filled the cockpit. They didn't celebrate. They didn't shout. They just sat there for a second, listening to the single engine still running. Because 30 minutes earlier, that sound wasn't guaranteed. As ground crews approached, they saw the damage. Shrapnel scars, burn marks, a destroyed engine, and a jet that still made it home. No press conference followed, no headlines, just a quiet entry in a mission log. Aircraft recovered. Sometimes survival isn't loud. Sometimes it's a fighter limping home in the dark. On one engine.